Hello and welcome to Kicking Kickstarter with me, Jeccles. I am here with Bizhan Khodabandeh to talk about his Kickstarter project, Outdoor Indoor, a new infinite canvas comic system.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm all good, thank you.
My name is Bizhan Khodabandeh, author and artist of Outdoor Indoor. My day job is the Communications Director of VCU's Department of Communication Arts. I know, it's a lot of communications. It's basically a marketing director with several other responsibilities. But during my free time, my passion is to make comics. I absolutely love comics, read comics, draw comics. I'm always thinking in terms of comics and of storytelling and narratives. Now, over the past 2 years, I've been working on this project during my free time with the goal of contributing something beautiful, engaging, and innovative. So what is an infinite canvas comic anyways? An infinite canvas comic was a concept first introduced by the comic theorist Scott McCloud, who I'm a huge fan of. He's a brilliant man. Scott McCloud suggested that with digital comics, one should treat the screen as a window rather than a page. This would allow for a complete story of infinite length to be displayed on a single ongoing page. Now, the page has limitations, the printed page specifically. We have to stop at the end of each row of comic panels. Treating the screen as a window allows the reader to view a comic without interruptions. Now, typically, we see infinite canvas comics in horizontal and vertical formats, but they've also been displayed in zigzag, circular, or z-axis viewing. They are usually presented as one large image. This is how our system differs. I'm working on one that's more efficient and provides more options to the reader. I'm currently working with a fellow cartoonist, Mart Litke, to develop a system that allows for efficient loading, segmented posting, and the ability to have an ongoing comic series. This will be made available for free to the public for download. Here's the prototype. You're seeing several individual posts being queued up as I scroll through the comic, also referred to as lazy loading. Each square of information is its own blog-style post. Here's a post, here's a post. Posting in segments allows for the system to queue up information as the reader scrolls through the comic, instead of loading the entire comic all at once. It's similar to the function of the most recent version of Google's image search, which now loads scrolling images instead of select pages, for those who remember that. When complete, the individual posts will also have titles, the ability to share through social media, an archive, the use of ads, and the ability to comment on individual posts. Both a vertical and horizontal will also be available to users. What I need from all of you is financial help to pay for the completion of the coding, as well as the user interface, design, a DNS, server space, and backer rewards. I would greatly appreciate your help for myself and for my fellow comic creators all around the world. Thank you.
So tell us how this project came about.
I've been reading a lot of theory by Scott McCloud and about his ideas of infinite canvas comics, and throughout the years I've been looking at his blog, and often he posts information about infinite canvas comics and how they're created. And I thought to myself, when seeing the relationship between the way that Google loads their images using a lazy loading technology, and related that directly to the way that a infinite canvas comic could potentially be posted, would be relatively easy using a similar coding technique. And seeing that relationship, then came up with the idea to then do the project. And the cats and that comic itself is really just the content to test the system. And I thought, well, if we're going to make the system, why don't we make it available to everyone for free and open source? Also, partially because I don't want to have to be fully responsible for any issues with the coding.
And how did you go about putting the project together?
So I spent, I don't know, it's been maybe like 3-4 years ago. I started it while I was teaching high school students graphic design. And it's just something I do on my free time, trying to get the comic done first. And I finally accomplished it. And then I met my friend Mark Lidke. And Mark, I worked on him with some coding projects with my new job, which is basically a marketing director for a university department, the Department of Communication Arts. And he was so great and so easy to work with that I asked him to do it. Also, he's a big comic book fan as well as like myself, and he's really interested in experimental narratives also, and does a lot of comics himself. So it seemed like the perfect fit.
How did you go about actually creating it as a project to be put onto Kickstarter?
Well, I mean, that part's just a marketing problem. So, you know, I collected the images that I already had, did a video. My little brother did the music. Mark I asked Mark to see if he could develop a beta to test and to show what the capabilities might be, to give people an idea of what the final outcome will be. And there's still a lot of coding to be done, and there's a lot of things that we want to do with the system that you don't really get to see in the Kickstarter campaign. But those things, you know, once we get the funding, then it'll be a little bit easier to do that kind of stuff.
What kind of things do you hope to do with it then? How do you hope to push it further?
So right now, all that's seen in the demo is the lazy loading technology, but we also plan to exhibit things like the titles. So each individual post, you'll have, just like a blog entry, you'll have the title, you'll have social networking options, so you can actually share these individual images, which is quite different from what people typically do. With Infinite Canvas comics, they're usually just one giant image that you navigate online. This way, people can post them as they finish them, and you can actually have a following. People can subscribe to your comic and, you know, pay attention to it over the course of several years. The other thing that we're trying to do is coming up with a system that's an archive, so you can jump into places of the comic. That's going to be a little bit more difficult. We're not sure how well that'll be able to be set up. I'm confident that Mark can do it, but that is going to be a hurdle. Trying to think of what else. I mean, those are, I guess, the major functional options that are going to be accessible that aren't exhibited in Kickstarter.
So if someone had this and they wanted to start doing a comic book, they could simply do it a few pages at a time and then just update that file within it that people have subscribed to, basically.
Yeah, and right, but specifically infinite canvases. So infinite canvases are a little bit different than a normal comic. The way that a computer functions is like a window. As opposed to a comic, you have an individual page and you read, you know, left to right, stop, go to the next line, read left to right, stop. With the infinite canvas comic, you just constantly go in one direction, potentially infinitely. So the idea is that it's more comics-like than any comics you've seen. Similar to what the Trajan column does, where it spirals upwards, telling a narrative, or the Dresden Kodak, which is they go a zigzag across accordion fold book. Things like that, where it functions a little bit differently than your typical comic. And what's nice about that is it gives you some options that you don't have with printed comics.
Gives you a lot more options.
What's that?
Gives you a lot more options with what you can do with the panels, rather than just a rectangular box. You can give them a whole different range of shapes.
Exactly, and a lot of webcomics right now, that's the way they're using them. They're using them like they're individual pages. Most people are, at least, or individual strips. So hopefully this will also help comic artists progress a little bit in the medium in general by having these experimental solutions. And we're not so naive to think that, there's going to be failures along the way when people are doing this, and this might not be something that everyone utilizes as their approach to comics, but it is a nice option added to all the other options that you have as a comic artist. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Why did you choose to bring it to Kickstarter, and how did you promote the fact that you had put it onto Kickstarter?
So the idea with Kickstarter is I already had a successful campaign with the Little Blackfish comic adaptation that I've done, and that's a Iranian folktale, and I needed financial backing to print, and for this, it's the financial backing is basically I want to be able to help out my friend and colleague Mark to be able to pay him, because it's not really his project. I need to pay him for his time to do the coding, as well as it does cost money to pay for a server and for a DNS and these things to host the comic. So those financial things, I needed support for. On the website itself, I also wanted to make available a printed version and T-shirts and things like that, which are the rewards for people who do back the project, and so I needed finance to also pay for those items, as well as what I found in the last project I did was that it cost a lot for all the shipping and packaging that I had to do, and I actually was in the red as opposed to in the black for the project when it first came out, at least.
So you definitely learned a few good lessons from the first project before going on to this one when it comes to the Kickstarter side of things. Definitely,
and I've also been approaching different graduate schools for comic artists, as well as I've been approaching some professionals to help me share it this time, which I didn't in the past. In the past, it was just me sharing on Facebook. This time around, I actually been sending out press releases to people that I thought would find interesting, and there's been somewhat of a response from some of these folks. A lot of the graduate programs actually have been really supportive. There's a graduate program in California called CCA that was responsive. There's one called the Center for Cartoon Studies, CCS. There's a Florida workshop, comics workshop organization that teaches comics. And that's not a graduate program, though. It's more of like a workshop-based system, but yeah.
Was it easy getting in contact with all those different bodies of education to find comic book artists, or was it quite easy to actually get in contact with them and do what you wanted?
Well, I actually had some of those contacts already, because they've come in, some of the professors of those schools have come and lectured at the university I work at, but also, I just looked them up, found their email addresses and emailed them, and thankfully they were very supportive and positive. I was surprised. I wasn't expecting that. People are pretty supportive, excited about the project, yeah.
And what can people get for different tiers, depending on how much they pledge for your project?
Oh man, I don't have that memorized. well, I think the lower tiers for I believe for $5 you get the PDF, and then as you go up, you end up getting archival prints, which are a big deal. I didn't explain it on the Kickstarter, but basically they're supposed to last for 100 years. So unlike your typical LaserJet printout, these are a lot nicer. They're inkjet, they're photo quality, and I'm going to sign them. Then there's a 36-page hardbound book. I really wanted the book to kind of feel like a children's book almost, but it's really more for adults. It's a bit gruesome at parts of the text. It's like I guess it's a children's book for adults almost. But in that way of like the natural world is not fair. Like you would be watching a documentary about lions, about some sort of predator. It's not in the sense of it's just people getting shot or anything. And then from there you can get more prints, signed prints. You can get drawings in the hardbound book. You can get original pages from the book, which means the actual pencil drawings and ink drawings that I've done for some of these pages, and a commission, which I've done. I often do illustration commissions for people where they ask me tell me basically what they want, and I work with them to create a finished piece.
And
and a t-shirt.
And a t-shirt. And the t-shirt. And where can people go to find out more about your project, new Infinite Canvas comic system, and yourself?
They can find more about me through mindedarrow.com, or they can go to Kickstarter's page, and if they Google search outdoor/indoor, they'll be able to find or through their search engine, outdoor/indoor, they'll be able to find the project.
Thanks very much, Bizhan, for talking to us about your Kickstarter project, Outdoor Indoor, a new Infinite Canvas comic system.
Thank you.